Hi, and welcome to a revamped version of Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Shemon.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, greetings. Today's episode of Locked On Big Ten is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every single order. Well, on today's show, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to introduce myself to you, let you get to know me. I'm going to get to know you a little bit. I'll tell you how we can do that. Also, I'm going to tell you what I envision for this Locked On Big Ten podcast moving forward. And then I'll tell you about some of the features and benchmarks that we're going to have every day at the end of the show. And we're going to have a lot of fun with all of that. Also, be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcasts. That way, you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each day. I'll tell you more about that in a minute as well. Plus, I invite all of you to follow me on Twitter at TalkBig10. I've been known to live tweet during games and events and stuff like that. We'll love to have you follow me. Again, that's at TalkBig10. As I said, my name is Craig Shemon. Here's the introduction part. I won't spend this much time reintroducing myself each day, but for this first episode, I'll give you a little perspective of where I'm from and my background and all that stuff. I was born in Michigan. I was raised in Indiana. And I went to Indiana University. Stop right there. All right. There's some people in Ohio that just heard me mention Michigan. There's some people maybe that went to Purdue that heard me say Indiana University. I'm going to promise you right now, I know rivalries are fun. I get it. It's what it's all about. But here on Locked On Big Ten, this is going to be a safe zone. Okay. Where everybody gets equal, fair, balanced coverage. I'm going to cover Purdue. I'm going to cover Ohio State just as much as I do Indiana and Michigan. Okay. I promise that. I'll even tell you, even though I went to Indiana University, I went to a few Purdue basketball camps as a kid, but don't tell anybody that. I don't want anybody to know. I did go to a lot of Purdue and Indiana football games as a kid, back and forth. I had somebody that took me to each of them. Fun story. My first ever game at Ross-Ade Stadium watching Purdue was in 1982 against Stanford. Some guy by the name of John Elway was quarterback at Stanford that day. And this is probably 2 months before the famous Cal-Stanford game where the band ran onto the field. Now, I can't remember what Elway did that particular day. I do know that Stanford won handily over Purdue 35-14 on that day. But a few months later, he ended up being the runner-up to Herschel Walker and the Heisman Trophy. So he was pretty good, no doubt about it. I've been doing some sort of broadcasting since I was 15 years old. Wanted to be a sportscaster since like third grade, all the way back. And I was in a unique opportunity that my high school had its own broadcast department. Couldn't wait to grow up and get involved in that. Had their own radio station, had their own TV station. I just jumped right in. Instead of playing sports, I was broadcasting them and doing all that kind of stuff. Started off in some small markets like Greenwood, Indiana, and then Bloomington, Indiana, while I was going to school at IU. While I was working in radio in Bloomington, I did everything. I DJ'd oldies, country music, but also I talked them into let me do a sports show, a little half-hour sports show every week. That was kind of the beginning of my sports talk career. Talk radio was just becoming a thing. Sports talk radio was becoming a thing at that time. And then I would go and do the play-by-play for some of the local high schools, Edgewood High School, Bloomington North, Bloomington South. Now, here's the funny part. I would record all my games. It was how I critique myself. I record them on cassette and would play them that night and make notes on what I liked and what I didn't like. Then I would get a press pass and I would go back to downtown Bloomington and go to the IU football and basketball games. And I would sit in the press box at the football stadium with a Walkman, the suitcase size Walkmans with, the orange foam headphones and all that. Now we got Beats and they're wireless and it's all cool. But Yeah, I had that in there, and I would dial up on the little radio that was part of the Walkman and listen to Don Fisher, the legendary voice of the Hoosiers, call play-by-play for football. I did the same thing at Assembly Hall. Get a press pass there and listen to him call basketball games. He's still there, by the way. 50, just finished his 50th year. What a legend in the Big Ten, and still going strong. Going to go on for many more years. But anyway, that's how I critique myself and taught myself how to do play-by-play back then. And then I turned that into my first play-by-play job in Charleston, South Carolina, as the voice of the Citadel Military College. Did their football, basketball, and baseball there for about 7 years. Then I made the big jump. What's Charleston, South Carolina? Market 88, I think. All the way to market number 2 in Los Angeles, doing national radio at that, at Fox Sports Radio. Started off as an update anchor and a weekend host. And by the time I left there, I was the morning show co-host. And then I went to Houston for a while, a couple years, did Yahoo Sports Radio as an afternoon host. And then I ultimately ended up in South Florida, where I currently host an afternoon show, co-host an afternoon show on an ESPN affiliate. And I've been doing that for about 6 years. Now, the reason I mention that is because that's an interesting story. The bond I have created with my audience is unbelievable. I've never experienced anything like it in my entire career. Now, probably the reason was, with this audience, I have gone through 2 Cat 5 hurricanes and a pandemic. They go through it. I go through it. We talk about it. They know that I'm going through the same stuff they are. And it's been a unique bond ever since. In fact, regarding the pandemic, I'll share this with you. You remember sports shut down for 100 days. When the country shut down, we didn't have sports for 100 days. Remember? And then we were this close to closing the college football season. And then we decided to have it late. And remember, we had the cardboard cutouts of fans in the stand. You remember? I mean, you block it out of your mind because it was a little while ago, but it wasn't that long ago. And so we got 100 days without sports. And I remember at the beginning of that, my operations manager came up to me and says, "Craig, what are you going to do? You're on a sports station and you have no sports to talk about." I said, "Well, this is not going to be a problem." He says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "This will be our greatest moment. You watch." Because building an audience is all about relatability. And sure enough, that 100 days without sports, that quarter, I had my highest ratings book ever. And we've never looked back. It's really when the show took off. Again, the audience knows I'm going through the same pain they're going through, and vice versa. And we share and we build a bond. Sports is secondary at that point. And it's one of my greatest success stories that I like to share with people regarding my long broadcast career. But it's also the same kind of bond I want to have with you here on Locked On Big Ten. And I think we could do it because I think we share a passion and an excitement for the Big Ten. And, I know it exists in the SEC. I'm going to give you an example, but we have that here in the Big Ten. And that's why I'm so excited to be part of this podcast now moving forward. And I'm so excited to have you be a part of it as well. So we'll get to that in a minute. But also, just to finish up on my background, a lot of play-by-play in the background too. I did NFL Europe on the NFL Network, did NFL on Fox, did a few games there, regular season games, did some college basketball games on the Big Ten Network. I'll share that with you as well. My first ever game on the Big Ten Network, this was years ago. I got a phone call from somebody I didn't know. I said, "Hey, our play-by-play guy has a funeral in the family, can't make it. How would you like to do the season opener at Assembly Hall?" And this person did not know I was an Indiana grad. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. That'll be great. So my first ever game I did with the Big Ten Network was at Assembly Hall. It was Indiana. It was Tom Crean's first game against Northwestern State. Not Northwestern State. Now, Indiana did win that game. But I think Tom Crean only had 1 or 2 scholarship players at the time, coming off the Calvin Sampson era, and they just didn't have any basketball players there. So that was my start for a few games I did with the Big Ten Network back in the day. And I'm always excited to talk about the Big Ten. Coming up in a minute, I'm going to tell you my vision for Locked On Big Ten and how it applies to you. So all that is coming up. But first, I want to tell you about Birddogs. Birddogs make you look good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg and give you a truly sculpted look. So what that really means is no more squats. You don't have to do squats. You got these pants, you got these shorts, you look fantastic. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts, the ones that are made of that stiff cotton that never really fits right. Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Birddogs uses anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. I live in Florida. That's important. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you that. All right, lots going on here on Locked On Big Ten. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to take a look at the Big Ten basketball players that are about to be drafted into the NBA. And speaking of that, don't miss Locked On NBA Draft Live on Thursday night. A pick-by-pick analysis from our stable of local hosts, national reaction from our NBA Big Board hosts, and live check-ins from inside the NBA Draft. Locked On NBA Draft Live starting at 7:30 Eastern Time on the Locked On NBA YouTube page. All right, now let me tell you about the vision I have for you and me on Locked On Big Ten moving forward. I'm going to do that by illustrating it with a couple of stories. First one, January 7th, 2008, BCS championship. LSU beats Ohio State 38-24. I'm one of 80,000 people in the Louisiana Superdome that day. And about the time that LSU, it was evident they were going to win the game early in the fourth quarter. The crowd there, even though Ohio State travels well, I don't want to say it was a home game, but it was close to being a home game for LSU down there in Louisiana. And the crowd wasn't chanting LSU, or, go Tigers. They were chanting SEC, SEC, SEC nonstop. And that fact was never lost on me. It made an impression on me. The loyalty to the SEC conference by SEC fans and alumni, it's amazing. It really is. And they have a certain pride that their conference is so tough that they just think they're going to put a team in the national championship every single year. But I argue that loyalty and that passion also exists in the Big Ten. No doubt about it. That's why I'm very excited to be doing Locked On Big Ten. And I think the Big Ten, with its passion and its loyalty, I think ultimately here with expansion, and we're not done. Obviously, the Big Ten is going to add USC and UCLA. They're going to add a couple more. I think it's going to be two power conferences. It's going to be the Big Ten and the SEC, and then kind of everybody else. Well, I'll tell you about that passion that I know exists in the Big Ten as well. I go to January 3rd, 2003, Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe, Arizona, the Fiesta Bowl. As a BCS championship between Miami and Ohio State. 2 overtimes, and Ohio State won 31-24. But you remember what was special about that game, right? The flag from heaven is what I call it. Miami thought they stopped Ohio State. They were on the field cheering, thinking they had won another championship. Helmets were off. The crowd was going nuts, the Miami fans that were there. And then there was that awkward delay. And all of a sudden that flag came raining down from heaven, or the official. Threw the penalty flag, the pass interference. The end of the Miami celebration, the awkward pause, the penalty flag, another beat, and then a noise I've never heard before or since. That crowd, that Ohio State crowd that was there, I've never heard a crowd make that kind of noise when they realized that their season was not over, that they were still alive, and that they could still win this game. I'll never forget it. It made the hair on my arm stand up. It was an unbelievable moment. There were 77,000 fans there that day. 60,000 of them had to be Buckeye fans. It was an amazing moment, and I will never forget it. But that passion and that excitement and that loyalty, that's where you come in. I want you to be an everydayer here with me on this podcast on Locked On Big Ten. And, it's going to be like our club. It's going to be like the cool kids club. And that's what I want to make this, and have that kind of loyalty that I was talking about earlier, where we got our own thing going, our own pride in the Big Ten. You and me every day right here. And the Big Ten's only going to get better. The TV contracts are ridiculous. They're getting more and more coverage. The amount of 3 different networks are covering the Big Ten. It's unbelievable, including and then the Big Ten network as well. So, and with the addition of the new schools, it's going to be the greatest conference of all time. I am absolutely convinced of it. And this is the podcast that I want to be on with you every single day. Locked On Big Ten. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you how much fun we're going to have with you everydayers, with features and benchmarks that we're going to do at the final segment of our show each and every day. So hang tight, and I will describe all of that in just a minute. First of all, I want to thank you guys for finding us. Again, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, Locked On Big Ten, your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll see if we can predict how many Big Ten basketball players get drafted in the first round of the NBA draft. And then I want to focus you to the final segment that we're going to have every day. We're going to have like 5 different benchmarks depending on the day of the week, and have a lot of fun with this. For example, on Mondays on the show, we are going to do what I call the Big Ten Top 10. Coming off a football weekend, for example, maybe I'll put together a list of the top 10, a play, a player, a situation, a last-second win, something amazing that happened, and we'll do that every single Monday. Big Ten Top 10 right here on Locked On Big Ten. Tuesdays, we'll do Tuesday tweets, kind of our mailbag segment. Again, follow me on Twitter at Talk Big Ten. Maybe I'll use a tweet by you. If it's spectacular, if it's witty, pithy, we'll put it on there. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll do that every Tuesday. Wednesday, we'll do my my Big Ten power rankings. I'll rank things in the Big Ten, probably standings as I see them, not as they really are. Also, maybe we'll do some silly stuff like coolest helmets and rank them 1 through 10, whatever, stuff like that on that particular segment. Thursdays, we'll take a look at the Big Ten Network. I love Big Ten classics on the Big Ten Network. I mean, I love sitting on a couch, flipping through with the remote control. And a 1979 Michigan-Ohio State game comes up. Oh, that's cool, because I like going back in my mind. What was I doing that day before I was watching that game? 11-year-old kid in Indiana. I think you guys do that too, and that'll be a lot of fun. So we'll do that on Thursdays, and then on Fridays we'll do our picks. We'll just stick with the money line. We'll keep the point spreads for the professionals to do, but we'll compare mine to yours. We'll post them, and we'll do pigskin picks. We'll do basketball picks, but straight up money line. And then maybe on Monday when we come back, we'll do a little recap before we do our Big Ten Top 10. We'll take a look and see how we did on the picks. I'm sure we'll do just fine. So that's it in a nutshell. That's my vision for this podcast. I hope you have a similar vision. I would love to have you with me here every single day. But thank you for finding Locked On Big Ten. And many ways to interact with me. But first, I would start off with, if you don't mind, follow me on Twitter at Talk Big Ten. And also you could download and subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts here, and get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten right away as soon as possible if you subscribe, for example, on YouTube. So again, thank you for making us your first listen every day. Also, I recommend checking out Locked On Sports Today. They cover absolutely everything. So check them out. In the meantime, thank you again for finding us. I want you to have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Craig Shemon on Locked On Big Ten.